So I graduated in 2012 from high school. So there was like a year or a few months after graduating that I didn't have DACA. So before that, I couldn't work like in a regular, I guess, store or place because I didn't have like the legal work permit or like the social security number. So I had to work under the table for a few months to, you know, work, get money, and save up for school because I knew I always wanted to go to school. I didn't know how I was gonna be able to fund it or how I was gonna be able to go, but I knew I had to. I don't really exactly remember where I was or what I was doing, but I remember feeling excited, happy, because I knew that I would be able to like, work legally now and work at different places, not where I was working, because I was working in a warehouse. So after that, I knew I was gonna be able to work like at school if I wanted to, or work like another store. It was just I just felt a lot of joy because I knew I could go to a school like a 4-year university now at that point. I could fund my education. I feel that I could actually do something. After graduating or getting my degree, I could actually work and do something with that degree. Because before I knew I had to go to school, but I didn't know if I could actually use that degree or use it to help other people or do whatever I wanted to do. So it gave me like optimism. I could actually do something now, not just get it and not be able to do anything. Because I had heard a lot of stories about students, getting their bachelor's or master's, but not being able to work in that field because they didn't have the work permit. I would like to see like a pathway or something because right now as a DACA recipient, yes, I have a work permit, but I don't have a legal status here. So I have to renew this every 2 years, and it's like 500 every 2 years. But we don't know what's gonna happen next. Like, am I gonna keep doing this for my entire life? Where is the program headed? And if it's headed somewhere, I wish they could create like a path to citizenship. For undocumented students, who've lived here their whole life, who've never been to the country where they were born. Yeah, to never give up. You might think you can't do it, or things may happen that you're like, oh, I can't keep going. But, there were students before us who had it even worse than us, and they were in a different place, and they still managed to, overcome those obstacles and go to a 4-year, graduate, get that degree. So just keep moving forward and don't stop. Okay, so I was born in Oaxaca, in a little pueblo in Oaxaca, and my parents brought me over when I was 6 years old. They just wanted a better life. They wanted me to have more opportunities here because they knew over there it was going to be harder for me to like get an education or be someone. So that's why they decided to come and bring me with them.
I was born in Tijuana, Mexico. I was between the age of 8 and 9, I'll say middle of third grade, so probably 8 or 9 around there. They just wanted us to come here to the U.S. to get a better education, and two, just to give us a better life, better lifestyle for our future siblings or to settle down as a family. Before graduating, like around my sophomore year, I had this. Everybody was, some people were talking about, oh, I'm gonna go to UCLA, I'm gonna major in this, and I'm over here just trying to get my homework done, not even thinking about it. But at first, I wasn't really thinking that I was gonna go to college, just for the main fact that FAFSA, you need to have a social security number. At first, I wasn't really thinking that I was gonna go to college, to be honest. Because even then, our senior year too, we had one of our counselors pass out little slips of paper to write down your first and last name and your social security number. And if you're undocumented, you just didn't get one. You didn't get no guidance, or didn't tell you, oh, you do this, no. But I was glad when I heard in June 2012 that passed the DREAM Act. For those who don't know, the DREAM Act pretty much pays for most of your classes and your tuition. And then in regards to DACA, Well, DACA helped me. I didn't feel it after, like, I didn't really start feeling it till like my senior year when everybody was, driving, all my friends were driving, getting jobs, and I couldn't get a job because simple fact, I was social security number. Um,
I was born in Mexicali, Mexico.
Do you remember what life was like?
Not really. I only remember what my parents told me because I was brought to the U.S. when I was only 10 months. So I wasn't really aware of what was going on or what kind of lifestyle I lived. All I remember is the stories my mom would tell me about her childhood. So my parents decided to move to the U.S. because they wanted to give me a shot at a better life. They saw the opportunities here in the United States. My dad had lived here previously with his godfather and liked the idea of living here and just liked the opportunities, the job, the money that he can gain here, and thought it was a better idea to just bring me here. Well, I was always aware that I came here illegally. I didn't know what that meant on the greater scheme of things, but I was aware of who I was, at least according to other people. I lived a normal life. My parents did have fear for me. I wasn't sure whether I would go to college or what I would do in my life after high school because I didn't have anything planned. I didn't know if I would even be able to work, if I would be able to, go to college, if I would do anything else. And my parents didn't know what it meant to go to college. So I guess I didn't know where I was going before DACA. My parents never thought about going back. They liked it here. My dad had started his own business here. He started his own gardening business, and we were winning pretty decent money for a family of 3 at the time. Well, family of 4 actually, because my other sister was born a year after me, and they owned a nice house. It was rent. We were renting the place, but it was a nice house. We had what we needed. We didn't have what we want, but we had more than enough, and there was never plans to go back. It was just to stay here. Put myself to school, and we didn't think 5 years after I graduated high school. When DACA came out, I was probably a senior in high school, and people kept telling me, and do it, enroll, why don't you do it? And honestly, there was fear because we didn't really know what it meant. DACA, were they just taking our information to try and take us away from our families? Are they actually going to help us? What does that mean? So DACA, I didn't apply until towards the end of my senior year. And I was able to get it right in time to apply to college. So I didn't really have difficulties because I did get accepted to some Cal States, Long Beach, Cal State, Northridge, Cal State Dominguez Hills, a university in Arizona that accepted me as well. So I had decent enough grades to get into college. I just didn't have that status to pay for it. Honestly, I didn't. My mom told me about it and she was excited, but I was like, Mom, I don't know what that means. What does that, what are the application process? Everybody heard DACA, but nobody knew what it implied by DACA. So I was like, Mom, if you tell me, should I do this? Should I put myself out there? Should I apply? Do you think this is a danger to the family? So I was very skeptical about DACA. I did not appreciate his rhetoric. With any leadership position, I think there's some sort of standard you have to uphold, whether you agree with what the population says or not. I think that President Trump is really, I think it's too straightforward, personally, for my liking. He should really consider that this country isn't just a country of all white Americans. There are Hispanics, there are Asian Americans, there's Egyptians, there's Indians, and I think he forgets to acknowledge that there are other races here in this country that are considered citizens because they were born here. Their families may not have come from here, or their culture is not from here, but they are born here. So I understand, because I'm taking political science, you kind of understand why these politicians do what they do. But it just angers me that he is still allowed to do that holding such an important office. I feel like there should be respect for that office. We, as DACA's recipients, are paying for what they weren't able to do. they weren't able to create an immigration reform years ago when they're, before we started, I guess, before we even got here. There's no exact pathway for us to get citizenship. And because of that, now we are living with the repercussions of it. So him repealing it is like taking away everything that I've worked so hard to get. All those stressful nights of studying, all that, continuous caring, you have to work 24, you have to work hard, you can't give up. All of that gone to waste. Everything that my parents sacrificed for more than 18 years, gone to waste. My mom hasn't seen her parents in over, God knows, over 10, 15 years. My grandfather passed away the past year, and she was desperate to go back to her country. And if she goes back, she can't come back here. So that if she were to leave, I would be responsible for my family. And that means my 2 younger sisters. One is in high school and the other one's in middle school. And that would also mean that I would have to possibly quit college or find a means to, figure something out so that I would take care of them if she were to leave. There's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. I don't know if I will ever actually be able to achieve my goals. There's nothing certain for me. I just have to live each day one by one and hope for the best.
I was born in Mexico City, in DF, but my mom's from Oaxaca and my dad's from Hidalgo. I came when I was 4 years old, so I started kindergarten here. Pretty much the same as Latin American immigrants for economic reasons. They couldn't afford living in Mexico anymore, so they wanted a better future for myself, me more access to education, like them to get a better paying job. So that was one of the main reasons, for economic reasons. I actually don't remember my parents talking to me about me being undocumented. I think I realized when I was undocumented was in high school, when some of my friends were pursuing college right after high school when we graduated. And that's when I realized that I'm not going to be able to apply because of my status as an undocumented student. At the time, I didn't even know what the term AB 540 or DREAM Act. I don't think the DREAM Act was there, or I wasn't aware. But that's when my parents told me that, oh, yeah, you don't have a social security. I don't think you could go to school. And my parents were very illiterate in terms of higher education. Therefore, I didn't get access to resources or even ask my counselors or anything, because I was kind of afraid, I guess, of the term of me saying that I'm undocumented. So it was during high school that I realized of my status. I graduated from high school 2010, so DACA was not in place at that time. I remember I didn't go right to community college right after high school. I started to look for jobs that would hire me, family-owned businesses that wouldn't ask for much documentation. So I ended up getting hired at a restaurant, family-owned. They would pay me under the table. I didn't have DACA at that time because it wasn't established. I worked there for 2 years. They would pay me cash. And then I remember DACA came into existence and I applied right away. I got it, and after that I quit my job because it was horrible. I started getting a job with the agency, and I did office work. They would pay me a little bit more. So I started saving up money to come to community college, and I decided to enroll here at Cerritos College. But I already had some money saved up to pay for school. I'm not sure, but I wasn't aware of DREAM Act because I remember I still paid some of my tuition here. It wasn't until I got more acquainted with financial aid services, and I spoke to them and I told them I'm an undocumented student. What can I apply for? and then I think I was able to. No, actually, I never got financial aid here. I just got the AB 540 exemption, which would grant me not to pay out-of-state tuition as an international student. So AB 540 helped me in that, and DACA just helped me pay expenses that I needed to pay as a commuter student, like bills and rent while I was staying at my mom's. So DACA was a big help for me as a student because it really gave me the means to sustain me as a student and buy my books, buy like just basic necessities that I needed. If I didn't have DACA, I don't think I would be able to pursue education because I wouldn't have the funds.
The day right after the election, there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think the election of President Trump created a feeling of fear because he wasn't exactly clear. He didn't exactly say what he was going to do regarding the Dreamers. Sometimes he'd sound sympathetic. Sometimes he would not sound sympathetic at all. It sounded like he wanted to round up everybody's parents who were Dreamers. Then he would say, well, I'm only going to go after those and deport those. We're going to begin with those who have committed crimes in the United States, delinquents and such. So I think that whenever the president talked about the subject, it seemed to change depending on the audience. If it was a much more conservative audience, he sounded much more passionately against the unauthorized immigrants. If it was perhaps a more moderate audience that he was going to be speaking to, then he would sort of tone it down. And I think that the lack of clarity in the message created that sense of uncertainty. The day after the election, I do remember a lot of very concerned students not knowing what is going to happen. The president, in his last statements concerning the subject, now again, this can change, we never know, said that he is not going to make a move regarding the Dreamers, that he is not going to touch it, not going to touch DACA, not going to touch the Dreamers, that he backed off perhaps he had other ideas, I don't know, but he seemed to have made a statement. He made a statement saying that he was not going to persecute the Dreamers, that he was going to leave things in place. So I think now, politically speaking, for those who are under DACA, I think observation, for those who support DACA, for those who are activists, it's to hold him to his word. If that is what the president said, then you keep your eyes open and you see if he changes his message. I think that the educational institution is committed, and I think from my point of view, I feel that there is support. I think that the institution has attempted to comfort students and to calm the student fear. And in that case, I feel like, look, the institution of this college is backing up the teachers. When the teachers say we teach anybody, the institution is not intervening to say, oh, but have you checked? We have checked. And the institution is saying, look, we're not responsible for immigration policies or the enforcement of those policies. That's a job for other government agencies or institutions. This is not a government agency, it's not an enforcement agency, and true, it must obey laws. But the college, like many other campuses across the United States, are committed to back up all its students. And in that sense, it makes me feel, to a degree, secure. It makes me feel secure that there's support, institutional support, from the administration, from the Board of Trustees, to support all students, including those students who have particular concerns over immigration.
Anything that would threaten or obstruct these individuals, these people, from basically being able to pursue their dreams, pursue their interests, improve their lives and the lives of the people around them. That's something that has an impact on all of us. because we're not islands, we're not all isolated. There's a general impact on the community that we can't even begin to understand. Now, we'd have to go back historically and look at other time periods where people have felt that basic security of their day-to-day lives being challenged in such a way. And not because they did something wrong, but it's a status offense. It's just by definition that they have to worry about something that other people don't have to. It undermines our entire community's ability to just to move on and to work and to have stability, which is probably one of the most important things that all human beings aspire to and have a right to. Well, the whole recent movement of what we would call the Dreamers, so including like DACA, like Deferred Action Students, we go back in time even to the 80s, 70s and 80s and the 90s, when the issues relating to undocumented students in higher education, like the Leticia A case historically, what we see is a continuity here that is in large part based on the fact that the United States has always had a problem with immigration policy. If you think about it, you frame it in certain different ways. The United States is just fine with having jobs and money cross borders if it's in the interest of people who make money, like corporate America. Whereas actual human beings, we still erect things like borders and enforce immigration laws that are extremely unfair to the actual people involved. And we see how over time the immigration issue, laws in Washington, and public policy in immigration fluctuates. It's cyclical to an extent. But you also see it used very purposely by certain interests in the United States because they know that it works. Immigration issues in the United States wax and wane in large part because it's used as a wedge politics issue to divide certain populations, to motivate and mobilize certain populations, especially in the working class, in blue-collar people in the United States. So that what you get is there's a yo-yo effect. It's a very cruel yo-yo effect related to immigrant populations because there are times when immigrants are encouraged to come to the United States for all kinds of different reasons because it benefits the United States and we have the ability to absorb them, to include them, and we all benefit. And then there are those times when for whatever reasons, whether it's economic or just political, it's in somebody's interest to basically retract that welcome and use immigrants as a scapegoat for other social problems, social ills, to mobilize certain populations on election day, etc. And so we've seen this for basically going back to, let's say, the Chinese Exclusionary Act, 140 years ago. And this is something that it happens over and over and over again. But there's something changing now, though. Just in terms of the demographics in the Southwest, the United States overall, but the Southwestern states and the Western states, with the growth of the Latino population and a more stable attitude towards immigration in general, because of the value of the immigrant population to the Latino population as a part of it, over time, the ability to use immigration and immigrants as a wedge issue hopefully will decline. And it will get to the point where there'll be a backlash that certain interests in the Western states and maybe even in Washington, D.C., nationwide, they'll learn that the immigration issue isn't as, valuable as a go-to to divide populations. And again, that just has to do with the demographics, that overall the attitude in this country towards immigrants will hopefully change. And so the Dreamer movement, as a part of that, if you think about it, it puts it at the top of the argument list. It gives it a moral and a social, a value-based, and a human-based aspect to it, so that it informs our larger community. And as people continue to recognize how this population has historically been taken advantage of, and how we can play a part in stopping that. Movements like the Dreamer movement, just like the Black Lives Matter movement. Everything that keeps an issue in our mind and in our hearts and keeps us thinking and talking about things moves us in the right direction. So it's all happening the way it's always happened. And the dreamers of today are basically just carrying the torch that other immigrants and their advocates have carried throughout history in the United States. You know, the idea of advising or motivating or encouraging people who are active, or even people who are dreamers by definition, but they themselves aren't active, aren't themselves out there advocating. And I would assume there's probably a lot of people like that, because they don't want to draw a lot of attention to themselves. They just want to go to school, get their education, etc. The one thing that I would hope, and of course this is based on my own values, would be that those who are able to benefit from the opportunities that both like the Leticia Aid Network back in the 80s and 90s, and then the DACA students, the Dreamer students of today, that as they're able to succeed and advance themselves and become part of the middle class and the professional class, that they'll basically reach back. You know, it's that old adage, you know, contribute, give back to your community. That's not an old thing. It's not something from the past. That's something that we all do. We all share. Every time one of us is successful, we make it possible for others around us to be successful as well, whether that's your immediate family, your extended family, your community, so that it's a value thing. That if you understand that you were able to succeed because other people struggled and other people hit the streets and other people voted and other people registered voters and other people before you and with you and around you did something to help you reach that success, I can't help but believe there has to be an obligation there that you willingly accept to give back and to make sure that other people had the same opportunities that you did.
So if we're looking at people who have come from another country and haven't had the resources to go through legal immigration channels, it's expensive, it's time consuming, it can be confusing, it helps if you have a lawyer to help guide you through. All of these things are impediments to legal immigration. And so if you are undocumented, you're already having a lower standing in society. Even if you've been here your whole life, you have this standing. And by whole life, I mean like since you were an infant or so. So the idea is, if you have higher education, you have more opportunity. You have more opportunity to advance. Hopefully things can change as far as immigration reform goes, and we find a way for the people who've shown that they want to be part of American society to give them a way to stay. But even if things go wrong and they end up having to go back, they will still have the education to take back with them, and hopefully that will give them more opportunities to advance economically. But I would hope they could stay in the U.S. and do that, since they've shown they're a valuable part of being in the United States beforehand.